The Evermore podcast is now sponsored by WFST Total Compliance. WFST provides fire safety requirements UK-wide to prepare you and your employees should the worst happen. Do what you do best and visit wfst.co.uk today. Enjoy the episode.
Let's go!
We've now welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Monday night. It's 10 o'clock. If you look at your watch, Aaron Ramsdale has possibly just taken a goal kick at St James's Park. That's how fucking long that he was taken on Sunday. But Mark and I are back asking the same question we do every Monday. What's going on? Mark, what's going on with you, mate?
Goals today, isn't it? Watching goals and just shitloads of them. What an unbelievable day in the Premier League just for pure madness.
It was, yes. So match a day will be quite interesting, I imagine. They might have to extend it, maybe an extra 25 minutes, possibly. And there's our little mate in the background, right on cue. I can just see the little tail there. He's peaked early.
We've renamed him the Podcat now, so
yes.
There we go.
The podcast is in the house. Well, we've got plenty to get stuck into. Mark's been doing some super duper work on the slides, and just to prove some of the points that maybe cropped up from Sunday. When Newcastle United lost. Unfortunately, we don't say that very often these days, but lost against Arsenal. But we're going to get stuck right in just before we do. A little reminder: if you're new to the channel and you haven't already, please consider subscribing. We'd love you to come on board. We're over 2,300 subscribers, I think. That was our 2,275, around about that. So yeah, smash a button. Loads of room for you guys. 2 live shows, this one on Monday and Wednesdays, and pop-up videos galore. We're also live tonight. Please jump in the comments, as everybody always does. We've got George was in early doors, paintings in a coal mine. It's a bit late for me, George.
I did wonder on that one. I might need an explanation on that, to be honest with you, George.
Maybe some kind of secret code, like the doves aren't flying or something like that. It's like Jumping Jack Flash this.
The seagulls follow the trawler.
That's it, the seagulls follow the trawler, yeah. Good old Roger's in the house. Good to see you, Roger. Gibbo's here as well. Les is here. Yes, Les, the prize winner that is coming this week, Les. I packaged that up for you today, mate, so that will be with you this week. Scrolling down, we've also got Jules in the house already. Good evening to you too, Jules. Right, let's get stuck in then. Right, so first thing to talk about, Mark, I suppose, was the bad stuff, which was Sunday. Obviously, I jumped on, did my post-match. I was less chipper than I usually am after a Newcastle game these days because we lost, which isn't great. But as you say there in the banner, we were outgunned by Arsenal, but I wouldn't say we were outclassed. I mean, I said this in the post-match. It definitely looked like third versus second to me. We had moments in the game. I don't think we disgraced ourselves. It was very reminiscent of that Liverpool game for me, where we looked really good in spells. We cut through them like a knife through butter, but we just didn't quite have that cutting edge, so to speak, Mark, when we needed it. Would you think that's about right?
Yeah, I think the word clinical, although even that probably flatters Arsenal massively, consider one of them was an own goal. But they took their chances. Newcastle didn't, and Newcastle had probably the better opportunities with the 2 that hit the post. You've got the 2 Willock opportunities, and the Isaac one that's deflected wide. There are chances there. If you look at the stats, Newcastle have a higher XG. They've got higher number of shots, less on target, but they played well. I mean, it was a little too open, and I think in that regard that there's lessons to learn from it massively in that regard. But the result was a bad thing. The overall performance was not a poor performance. It's not the Villa performance, for example, where they were just dire all over the pitch.
Yeah, I must admit that the Villa one was more alarming, wasn't it? Because we were totally just outplayed in every possible way against Villa, outfought and everything. I didn't think that was the case on Sunday. I think that, I said this in the post-match, and I think every bit of content I've hoovered up since then had pretty much said the same thing, that we really lost the midfield battle against 2 really good players who executed their work. It's not like Eddie Howe here. Executed their work brilliantly on Sunday, in obviously Odegaard, who's one of the best midfielders in the league, if not Europe, and Jorginho, fair play to him. I think he did a fantastic job in there. He came in for Thomas Partey. Just his use of the ball was brilliant. I think he knew exactly when to hold, when to release, when to kind of come short, when to drop. drop deep and that kind of a thing. He knew exactly what he was doing on the ball. And I think elements of the game, certainly Joe Linton, we'll talk about the midfield in a minute, Mark, in more detail, but Joe Linton lost his head a bit, I felt, certainly with the pen, which I don't know if you've got a still on the pen. And obviously when the pen first happened, that was a big talking point. I was being totally unbiased in the chat group, screaming pen, Cavan is a fucking bastard and everything else. But when you look back at it, I mean, I think you were the first person to say, actually, do you know what? You look at that again. And when you look back at it, it was pretty clear, wasn't it, that it did hit his thigh and then his hand. But it seemed to really trigger Joe Linton after that. He never seemed to be able to get back into the right mindset of the game. What do you put that down to, Mark? Do you think it's just his passion? Or do you think it's just, maybe the game was a bit big for him? Or what do you think?
I don't, not the latter. I don't think it's a game that's too big for him. I just think it's one of those things. He's probably fired up.
He's too fired up.
He's playing out of position because I don't think Joe Linton works on the right hand side of a midfield three. No. Oddly, but I just think it went against them. And look, it's obvious it hits his leg, but VAR again, it takes too long.
Yeah,
it takes far too long to come to that decision. It was an awful long time, and I get that you've then got to send the referee over to view the monitor, but you could see on the first replay that it flicks his leg, and once that happens, that's it. That's the rule. If it hits his leg and then hits his arm, it's tough. That's the end of it. I've seen. I mean, I would look at the commentary from Newcastle's YouTube commentary from online, and they were berating the ref, saying it was outrageous that it wasn't it. It's just come on. If that's the other end, that's you're screaming for it to not.
I said that, I said that as well in the post match. Yeah.
So that's the way you look at it. But I just didn't think Joe. He did lose his head for a little bit, and I mean Jesus. I mean it's the kind of the one bright moment from him from a Newcastle point of view was did he try to pull him away and have a word with him, and I think he absolutely did the right thing. I'd expect a Newcastle player to do that though. Do you know what I mean? I just somebody to pull him to one side and just like you have to calm yourself because he is a tightrope, a little bit like Bruno. They've got that passion. They just run on the edge sometimes, and Joe Linton more than most, he gets booked quickly, so he has to control that side of things a little bit more. But I love the firiness of him. I love the fact that he's got that in his locker.
Yeah, no, I think to be fair, most of the time for Bruno and Joe Linton, it goes in their favour, doesn't it? But I mean, Bruno. We've talked about Bruno. I talked about him on the post match as well. Probably one of his poorest games for Newcastle. I think he lost the ball a hell of a lot. I'm just going to quickly look at his stats. Weird enough, even though we're saying he had a poor game, his passing accuracy was still 89%. But in terms of him, he possession lost 15 times. That's, I mean, it doesn't seem a lot, but for Bruno, it is quite a lot in terms of how much he's lost possession. And he did put us under pressure a good few times on the edge of the box where he maybe tried to do a little cheeky stud roll or he wanted one or two more passes. But you had a bit of a theory on that, Mark, didn't you? The reason that Bruno was maybe losing the ball. I mean, we all said it. We all said it that he was missing, and I think everybody was missing that huge North Shield shaped hole of Shaw Longstaff in that midfield that just seems to be the glue that holds all of those guys together. You got some interesting slides in it to illustrate why missing Sean is a huge problem and how it affects the other lads as well. But Bruno in particular, I think, really was affected with Sean not being there, wasn't he? Because he wasn't able to maybe play his natural game, and he was having to come deeper to maybe fill in for Sean not being there.
Well, the odd thing was, I think the deepest of the three was overall in their average positions is Joe Linton, and that's not his natural game. And then I think Bruno's trying to do things that he doesn't have to do normally in games. If you look at their average positions, you can see Bruno's probably slightly too far forward in that regard. He's playing at the head of the centre, so whereas Joe Linton's the deeper player, and I just don't think that suits the way that Newcastle play. That pivot in the middle, where Bruno sits, and then he's got Sean probably slightly further forward or alongside on the right, and then Willock or Joe Linton further forward on the left, works much better because it brings in those those passing connections between them. If you look at the passing network for that, it's clear that it was so dominated on the right hand side again. There was nothing. When you look at Bruno in the middle there, he's very much his passing is all right, and nothing goes to the left, and that's unusual.
Yeah.
You normally see him spread, so that those passing networks are all over the place, and it was so limited. And I think that's really down to the fact that because Sean's not there, Sean's not patrolling that side of the field, and therefore he hasn't got the outlet one side. He just didn't have the outlet the other, because obviously Joe Willock was much further forward at times, and you really lost something in that midfield as a result. And then when you come on to the sort of the when the goal happened, and this was the I mean, it was just an open field for Odegaard, really. You can see I've highlighted the midfield three there. I mean, fair enough, Bruno, you've got his sort of watching between Ben White and Saka there on the left-hand side of Newcastle's defence. But Willock and Joe Linton are so deep, and there's nobody to I mean, the next nearest player is, nearly 10 yards away? And the ball at that point, they should be 5 yards further forward. And if that happens, then that goal doesn't happen probably. The one later on, and in essence, it ended up being irrelevant because of the fact that the ball was played through for Saka. But the amount of space, I mean, that would terrify me. The fact that the amount of space Odegaard's got there in the middle of the field, if that ball is then checked and played across to the right, suddenly Odegaard's got a free run at the two defenders in front of him, with Saka one side and Jesus on the other. And it was like that an awful lot of the time during the game, where Newcastle didn't have that control in the middle of the park, and it's so used to them having that control where Bruno was central, the other two either side, and it's just it was missing. And it's clear how much of an impact Sean, despite the fact he was, he was nearly kind of bounced out earlier in the season, because fans were, well, some will not say all, but some fans were like, they couldn't see the point in being in the field. Do you get it now? This is the point. Do you get it? Do you get how integral he's been to this side? And when he's missing at Villa, they lost that battle. When he's missing there, again, you lose that battle in the middle of the field, and Bruno's having to do an awful lot of work. And then you've got the two that sit it deep for Arsenal, that they just couldn't get near, really.
Yeah, I mean, I guess making a point about Willock being a bit slow to react. I mean, Willock was great going forward, but I felt going back, he was kind of wanting a bit. And I know you said that Joe Linton off the left is much better at kind of getting up and down the park. But it's kind of come out in the news a little bit now. It's not looking good for Sean Longstaff's injury after everyone thinking it was going to be a fairly straightforward thing. He potentially could have been back for the Arsenal game. Apparently, I think they've found something on the scan where they think it might be more serious than the first thought. So it looks like Sean will be out for the remaining games of the season, and that's a big blow for Newcastle, but also for Sean, because with this club the way it is and the way it's going, Sean might be kicking himself, thinking, I can't believe I've got injured, because in the summer, who knows who we might sign in that position in terms of that number 6. Because I think yesterday was a clear indication that we need a player in that role, in that number 6 or number 4 for PK if he's watching, number 6 role that sits at the base of that midfield. A number 6 gets out Odegaard and stops that shot. A number 6 slips back in when Botman and Shaw are under pressure, getting pulled all over the place. A number 6 fills in almost as that kind of advanced defender and drops right in there and stops that kind of relentless attack by Arsenal. And then also allows the other lads to push a bit further forward for their attacking prowess to hit them on the break. So that position has become such a key position. We see in the comments every single episode we do. It's become such a important position now, and depending on who we go out and get, whether we go and get kind of Alvarez, Alcaraz, from Ajax. Declan Rice is obviously Hollywood style, whether we can get someone like that. But, even someone like maybe come and entice a Calvin Phillips away from City who isn't getting any game time. There's talk about Thuram as well, isn't there, from France? Loads of these players being linked. I think that's such a key position for Newcastle. But just quickly moving on to another key position, Mark. If you just pull up those average positions again, there's just something I want to highlight there, which obviously leads us on to the other key position. I mean, look how far back Dan Burn is in there. Now, I know you said when we spoke about this before, come on, it's almost like we're playing with 3 centre backs there. But there was times, I think, on Sunday where we broke down the left, and I think Burns' lack of ability to move forward and kind of carry the ball and do something with the ball was kind of shown on more than one occasion. Arsenal had the kind of privilege to bring on Tierney when Zinchenko was getting kind of run ragged a little bit defensively. But as good as Dan Burn is as a defender, we will have European football next season, right? It doesn't matter whether it's Champions League or Europa. Hopefully it's Champions League, but we cannot go into that campaign with Dan Burn as our main left back. I think looking at Trippier in that average positions and just how much of the play goes through Trippier on that right hand side, we need a balance on that left hand side, Mark, don't we? We need to be able to switch it wing to wing, because we become a bit too one dimensional, we become a bit too predictable when it's just Trippier getting the ball and trying to make things happen. That's got to be a key position too, Mark, when you say in the summer the left back role. And again, Sunday highlighted it more.
Massively. Look, Burn has been excellent defensively. He's barely put a foot wrong in that regard, but he doesn't do enough in terms of you getting forward. He doesn't support that left hand side, and I think that's a credit to the two Joes, because they use that left hand side of the field so well. And actually, maybe it's worked a little bit more with Burn being a little bit more defensive minded. But the key things here, and actually, again, give credit to the Mark Stats on, I think it's Mark R Stats on Twitter, who these come from. And you can see on the right hand side here, the Newcastle in possession, just how deep Dan Burn is. And you are looking at, in possession going forward, you're playing a 3 at the back, because Trippier is always going to get forward. But then you're right, it totally imbalances the side, especially when you haven't got the tandem working on the left-hand side as well as they do. So in that regard, if you've got to switch things up, you want somebody that can overlap, that can get forward, is quick enough to join in the attacks, is quick enough to, to get into those positions, to put a ball in for Wilson or Isak, or to play it across the field, to help out. In the end, help out the likes of St. Maximin when they're playing from the left-hand side, who I thought was very, very good when he came on.
Very sharp.
Again, showed us what he can do. He looked sharp. He looked up for it.
He always does that in big games, Mark. When the bigger the game, the better the maxi, really, isn't it? I mean, it's can you get it up against
all the time, man. That is it.
Everton, exactly. Southampton, and that. Can you get it up against them? But he can't always do it against Man United. Just a couple of shouts there, Mark, for that man again. Grimaldo, good shout from Maggot, and then a shout from Derek. But he has to be high up on a transfer list, Mark, doesn't he? Yes, that's a great signing.
I think so. I think Grimaldo is going to be high up on an awful lot of teams' lists, and that's probably the worry. Exactly, he's free transfer. In the grand scheme of things, he's not going to cost an awful lot because of, I guess, because of where he's coming from. He's not suddenly going to be, able to command £200,000 or £300,000 a week. He's not at that. He's not in that level. He's not coming from that contract already. So it seems like an ideal fit. The lad from Dortmund, is it Guerrero?
Guerrero.
The other one. And there's a couple more that are almost at the end of their contract or at the end of their contract.
Champions League experience as well. Absolutely. That's key.
But also, we'll go back to Grimaldo again. It's the threat from set pieces. It's the threat from his delivery from the left hand side. He's the left-footed Trippier, if you want. He's going to get into those positions. He's going to overlap. He's going to put the ball in the box. He's going to get into positions to shoot. He can take free kicks. He can take corners. It's that package you want on either side.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, that, for me. I mean, just jumping back to that defensive midfield position, some great comments there from Terraces. What's your view on these new signings? Rice could be costly. Lavia from Southampton's a great show. I think he's looked really good. But the last name is a big one for me, Mark. I was a huge fan of this kid when he was here the first time round, Mikel Merino. Didn't quite, I think it was maybe a move too soon for him, but he went back to Spain. He's been phenomenal in La Liga. He's got himself into the Spanish national team. He's played with Isak before as well, so there's a link there too. I think he would be phenomenal in that midfield 3 with Joe Linton and Bruno. I think that would be a no-brainer to get Merino. What do you think, mate?
It's certainly a shout, isn't it? And he knows the league, he knows the club. It's
It was the
It
fans. Very
seems
complimentary about it as well, isn't it? Yeah.
it sounds an ideal fit. Look, he's not going to take long to settle in. He doesn't need to. He doesn't really need to. He's been there and done it. He's got plenty of time ahead of him. It's not like you're bringing in a 30-year-old. He's coming to he's 26. So he's got plenty of time ahead of him to work with a group around and maintain the levels that he's found now. He's been back in La Liga. Can he stay at those levels in the Premier League? I think so. I think he's definitely good enough.
Now.
It's all about it. It's all going to be about cost.
That's the thing. I mean, certainly maybe, Pep's going to lose a few midfielders, isn't he, in the summer, likes of Gundogan and people like that. Maybe he'll look at Mourinho and think that's a good fit to come in, kind of almost a very similar type of a player. Jules is just saying that your stats have reminded him of the Crippen factor there, mate. Just to a little bit of a flashback back the old.
That's a second Krypton factor reference of the day, totally outside of this, but I referenced that earlier on to Chris as well. So
there you go, absolutely. Mind you, it does remind me of the handling from Quantum Leap, that one that you show. Remember Al with the old handling, smacking the old thing. It does remind me a little bit of that as well. It's a shame Ash isn't in the comments. He'd be all over that as well. But what's this comment here? Kone is the midfielder we need, says Magadron. He's another very good player who's high up on the list as well. Comment there from James saying, do you believe the Rafinha rumours? Is he worth 80 million? He's not worth 80 million quid. But it's interesting because the latest transfer rumours just broke tonight is that apparently we've pulled out the Moussa Diaby deal, Mark, that Arsenal now front runners for him. And I think we're looking at, is it Nico Williams from, is it Atletico Bilbao? I think, is it Nico Williams? I remember.
Yes. Is it Neco or Nico Williams?
Neco. Nico Williams is the Welsh lad, isn't he, from Nottingham Forest? Neco Williams, the one who's fast as Fook from Atletico Bilbao.
It might be Nico. It must be Nico because I'm sure it's Nico. So apologies for torturing your name.
Yeah, no, it is Nico. Terra Caesar says it is Nico Williams. It is Nico William. So single William. But yeah, I mean, the Diaby one's a funny one because it's always been rumbling in the background. But maybe they just want too much money, possibly. Do you know what I mean?
Sorry, say that again. I broke up there.
Oh no, I'm just saying that the Diaby thing has been rumbled on for so long, and the initial instance was that they wanted too much money for him. And maybe Newcastle just said, "Look, we're not going to be held to ransom this. We're going to move on. We're moving on to different areas, and possibly maybe they've looked at the players that they've got. Maybe they've looked at the players that potentially get lined up. I mean, there was a little cheeky leak, wasn't there, from Trippier the other day when he said that little sentence about a certain James Ward-Prowse who played very well tonight. Southampton lost 4-3 in the end. But he scored a penalty to Ward-Prowse and some brilliant deliveries getting whipped in again into the box. But it doesn't seem to matter because our lads can't head a fucking ball to save their life. But when Trippier was asked the question about the set pieces, he said, well, when he comes in, I'll be off the more now. Oh, sorry, if he comes in. Do you think that was a little bit of shithousery by Trips? Or do you think he knows something? He's maybe let slip a little bit there.
It was an odd one because I looked at it. I was like, he hasn't just said that. No, he has. Shit. Could that be a little slip that something's already cooking for the summer? Like it could just be a slip. It could just be a slip of the tongue. It's as easy as that. But you just never know. But look, he's brilliant from set pieces again. He certainly comes in and would fill that role in the middle, allow Bruno to move or play in that Sean role where he gets up and down a little bit more.
Where does he play Ward-Prowse? Say if he comes in our midfield, right? He's 25 million quid is the reported fee, which I think is a fucking snip for a player of that quality, personally. An absolute bargain. He's been a captain in the Premier League for a long time. He's got a ridiculous amount of assists and goals in the Premier League. He's still only 28. He's at the peak of his powers. He's a very, very good footballer. England international as well. Where does he go in that midfield? Does he go to the right-hand side of that midfield and Joe to the left and Bruno in the middle? And then we don't have that six. How would it work? How would it work with Ward-Prowse theoretically if we're going to get it?
I guess you have almost exactly the same setup as you have now with Bruno playing that role from the middle, dictating everything that goes on. You've then got the ability to then swap with somebody like Ward-Prowse who can do exactly the same job or he can play further right, which I think would be great because he's then got the angle for delivery into the box as well from a little bit wider. He can get a little bit further forward. He can get into those shooting positions too. So it's almost then to have him and Sean as the two for that position. And I think that would work well. It also then probably allows you to play a two, a little bit like Arsenal did, and play the Xhaka and Jorginho double in that sort of defensive midfield area, and play Bruno and him in that role where you've got to keep the ball a little bit more. I think that would probably work. But I mean, you can fit him in all over the place for 25 million. It's an absolute steal.
It does. I mean, there's so many players that are going to be linked to us in the summer, but I mean, is there room in the team, for argument's sake? Is there room? Jules off the bed. Good night, Jules. Early one for you. You watch us on the catch up. Good to see you. But if Ward-Prowse is in the middle, as Derek says, that doesn't quite have the same ring to it. I don't think he's going to elbow Bruno out the song, mate. But if Ward-Prowse is in the middle, and you kind of, I'm just trying to think, is there room for Maddison as well? So if you have Bruno and Ward-Prowse next to each other, could Maddison be at that diamond of that three in behind Isak? Could that work? Or would it be a case of if you sign a Ward-Prowse, you don't sign a Maddison? Because I know who I'd rather have out of the two of them, no disrespect to Ward-Prowse, and I'd rather have James Maddison. Did you see his assist tonight for Barnes, that little take and touch and just the little flip around the corner? I was just thinking to myself, him and our team, man, would be unbelievable in this team.
Yeah, it's an odd one as well because I do think the brilliance that Maddison would bring to the side, but I think there's more need else. Well, this is part of the problem. I think there's probably more need elsewhere for you to be able to bring in somebody in that sort of more defensive midfield role, and then I think that you don't spend your money on somebody like Maddison. You spend it on a wide play. You spend it on the left back, and do you know what I mean? And another centre back, because I think that's absolutely needed. So if you can bring Maddison in, great. I just think he goes to the back of the pile now.
Yeah. Sorry, Derek. I have just realised it was a Nick Pope song you're talking about. It's been a long day, as PK would say. I blame the rain. It's washed me out, mate. Andy J. Tate is just saying a question, maybe in a popular opinion, but if Big Dan Burn becomes our backup centre half going forward, is he really better than Lascelles in that position? It is opinion Lascelles is better in the box and quicker. I don't disagree that Lascelles is better, certainly better in set pieces in terms of goal threat, and he is a bit quicker. I think Burn probably has better positional sense. Defensively, I would say. You don't see Burn getting tied up in knots as much as you do Lascelles at times. Lascelles, I think, quite often uses his pace to get himself out of trouble, but the Premier League's getting quicker and quicker, and the players are getting quicker and quicker, and Lascelles is finding himself now struggling to get back and recover, Mark, isn't he, when he does get caught out in positions?
Yeah, he's a serviceable backup, isn't he? And a little bit like Lascelles, he's never going to start for you, I think, once you get the pieces in place. But I think he absolutely fits the bill to be somebody that can come in and play a role either at left back or at centre back. If you have to throw in an extra defender in, he can come in and do that too. So, if you're 1-0 up, protecting the lead with 10 minutes to go against Real Madrid or something ridiculous, probably Dan Burn's not the man you want to turn to. But if you want to throw in an extra defender, he'll come in and do your job. But he's not going to be as a starter. I think he's a better defender than Lascelles. I agree there. I just think he just gives you a little bit more option as well with the two roles. I think he's a lot more consistent defensively than Lascelles. I just think he's a much better option as a backup.
Just before we get to Coyne's comment there, just talking about defenders, providing that we get in the Champions League, which hopefully we will, all this talk about Paul Dummett getting another contract, I think it goes back to that point you were making about the homegrown and home-trained players that you can have in your European squad. Obviously it looks like that probably will happen. Just we'll get your take on that in a second. But does that also offer opportunities to the likes of potentially Matty Longstaff to get an extension, maybe stay in the squad to fill another gap for that, mate? Or do you think Matty's kind of time's gone, but Dummett definitely?
I don't think Matty will stay. I think Matty will go off somewhere else. I do think I think that it makes a little bit of sense to keep Dummett around, just for that
experience
purpose.
Yeah.
And you really then only have to register one of the younger lads that sort of come through the in the 23s. So you're not having to filter in 2 or 3 of that group. You have 3 that you can have in there perfectly well now, and then just add one more. So I think the Dummett one makes an awful lot of sense in that regard.
Yeah, I'm with Terraces here. I'd love to see Eddie do something Matty, because Matty's got ability as a player. We saw that player burst on the scene. He's been totally mismanaged by just dreadful coaching in this football club. I'd love to see him under Howe, just to see what Howe could do with him, mate. But I do fear for you that I think that he's probably gone. I think the ship has sailed. As Tocoin says there, he is injured, recovering from an ACL. But it would be good for the Longstaff family morale if we kept them around. I mean, I know you're a fan of Matty. You're the same as me. You think what's happened to him is pretty shit at the football club, really, in terms of the way that he has been treated. Because the potential of the kid is there, and with a good coach, day in and day out, who knows what he could possibly be. But I just think the way that midfield is going, and Anderson, another good cameo by young Anderson at the weekend. Not scared, getting stuck in. That tackle on Xhaka was something else as well, by the way. So I do like Anderson. And do you think the better Anderson is in his cameos, the less chance Matty's got of having that kind of lifeline thrown?
Yeah, probably. Look, and there's a couple of comments already, and we talked about this morning. There's a couple of comments in there about playing Anderson against Leeds, and I would absolutely go for that. I would play Anderson on that right hand side. If Sean's going to be out now, I would bring Anderson in, and I would allow Joelinton to move back to his more natural position with Willock ahead of him, allow them to rotate, allow them to do exactly what we know they can do. But I think the form of Anderson probably means that you don't keep Matty, and for Matt, that's sad for him, because he genuinely looked like, of the two, he was the more talented of the two at one point. And if anybody, I would have suggested, if you told me 2 years ago which one was going to be the key player in the squad and which one was probably on his way out, I'd have flipped it. Yeah, exactly.
You would have done. Yeah, it's certainly from that goal threat that he had as well. That's one thing we miss in that midfield. I mean, Willock has a good few chances the weekend, doesn't quite get it right. Matty almost seemed to like one touch out of his feet and bash in the back of the net, didn't he? That Man United game, both Man United games. And that one against St Etienne he scored as well in that friendly. But listen, whatever happens with Matty, I'm sure everybody will wish him well, especially his brother. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in the summer. Maybe something may happen. But yeah, I'm kind of with you, Mark. I think it's probably, Matty will move on. Hopefully he gets a championship move or something, gets a chance to rebuild his career, and really show everybody what he's made of. But just going back to Sunday before we move on to the last section that we had with the media Muppets at it again. Isak and Wilson, we were all surprised to see them start together. We were all quite excited to see what was going to happen. Didn't quite work, really, did it? Was that the game that it was in, or was that the fact that you're better off having one on the bench and one on the pitch? What was your take on the Isak Wilson thing?
I think in hindsight, you play one of them, and you have the ability to then change things up and give them the chance second half, give them a different look at. It didn't really work early on. I thought it was. I thought when Isak broke down the left and then put the ball across, it ended up with Murphy when he hit the post. I thought at that point, actually, this might work. But Wilson was so quiet. He wasn't given really any service. Most things bypassed him. He ran around. He worked hard. He did. There was a few good little layoffs that he got involved in, but as a goal threat, he was completely non-existent. But as a striker, you rely on serving. He just didn't get any in, and I completely agree with that. I think Isak has to be the one to start through the middle now, because I think he's just more of an overall player.
Yeah. So against Leeds, you bring Anderson into midfield and put Joe Linton back on the left-hand side of midfield.
Yeah,
And Isak through the middle. That's what you do,
I
yeah?
would. I would.
Not
I
bad
would.
show,
I
you
would
know.
have. No, I would. I would keep the back four the same. I would have Anderson right, Bruno middle, Joe Linton left, Willock ahead of him, Ian other on the right. Probably, I'd play Almiron.
Yeah.
Again, Murphy, I didn't think had a bad game. He could quite easily have scored within the first. What was it? The first few minutes.
It's a good strike. Good strike as well, to
It
be fair.
was. And so unlucky the way that comes back. On another day that comes back and hits Wilson and bounces back in the net, or it lands at his feet, and it's just one of those. And again, the ball in for the Isak header that hits the post, I thought was a very clever little ball. But there were several ones where his final ball was poor again. But on the flip side of that, if that's Almiron, he's not in those positions because he won't get to the byline and use his right foot. He's going to check back. And you've got, what do you want more? And I probably talked myself in leaning towards you starting Murphy. So I would probably play Murphy on the right, just for that fact alone.
I mean, obviously, we'll get into the Leeds preview later on in the week, but we've got to remember we're going to have more of the ball against Leeds. We'll have way more of the ball than they will. They'll dig in, they'll camp in. They won't be like Arsenal. They won't, catch us on that break. They won't pass through the lines like Arsenal did. Allardyce will have them soaking up the pressure, trying to hit us on the break, and shithouse a 1-0 win probably, because that's Allardyce's style. Ugly. I remember it very well.
Just thinking about it.
Just trying to race it back from memory banks in a Newcastle lifetime. But I think, one good thing we can rely on from Eddie Howe is that he'll get the lads on the training pitch and he'll get a reaction from the Arsenal game. And I really think that reaction will come against Leeds. And I think Terracese is bang on there. Wilson is an excellent sub, and we should use him in that way. And it works better for the club and for Wilson as well, because he won't no chance of him breaking down. But can you imagine if that game is getting a bit dicey and a bit ugly, and it's maybe 70th minute, and you see Callum Wilson and Anderson Maximum warming up as two subs? They can change a game for you. If you're starting Wilson and Isak, we haven't got another option. If Isak's having a shitter or he's struggling, you bring Wilson, all of a sudden Isak pulls out wide, and it gives him more, a different dynamic to play the last 20 minutes. But I do think Isak through the middle, certainly against Leeds, and the spaces that they leave behind and the lack of pace they've got at the back, I think we could be a good 2 or 3-0 up by the time Wilson even comes off the bench. So yeah, I'm with you on that, Mark. I think that is a really good shout. And so in terms of the weekend, I suppose to sum up the game before moving to the next bit, as you rightly say, we didn't play bad. I just think in the key moments we didn't step up in the key moments. I think we were kind of wasteful with the ball. I think we weren't clinical enough with the chances. I mean, Willock's got a good 2 or 3 chances there. He's got to put away. He's got to put away at least one of them. And then I think we're draw level like this one here you're talking about.
That one, I mean, you look at it and you go, there's the two that hit the post. This one, I mean, I'm sorry, he has to bury that. I mean, he hits it far too close to the keeper. You've got Fabian Schär's header, which, I mean, it's an unbelievable save from Ramsdale, but another yard either side, and that's a goal. And then that one, and look, I give a little bit of leeway for Wilk on this one, because as the ball's trying to cross him, he's trying to get it to his foot to hit the strike. But look at where Xhaka comes from. He's the guy you can see steaming
Great
in at that
challenge
to get that block.
Yeah, brilliant,
phenomenal.
Brilliant challenge.
You may not like the guy, but my God, that was a hell of a block.
I hate him.
What a block that was.
If that had been our player, I'd have been waxing lyrically about that. But it was a great challenge.
Look, on another day, the 2 that hit the post go in. The penalty could be a different incident. Schär's header goes in. Suddenly that game's, that could be 2-2, 3-2, 3-3. I mean, the couple of saves that Pope makes, from Odegaard and from Martinelli, it could quite easily have ended up 4-4 again. It was one of those games.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm with you. Just one last bit on Anderson there. I think he did himself no harm getting on the ball. He got in the box a couple of times. He tried to make things happen. That tackle on Xhaka, I think, just maybe showed Eddie Howe Do you know what? He's up for this, because we've said this before. He went to Bristol Rovers as a boy and he come back a man. He put the muscle on and he was, he was toughened up by playing in that league. And that's the kind of thing you want those loan deals to do. We had a Rant video about Grant Quall earlier on today, how he's been criminally underused by Hearts, and the Hearts manager saying he's not big enough, he's not strong enough. You have to develop these players in those leagues. You have to expose them to that type of football to allow them to develop their game. That's the whole point of loaning Premier League players. Bristol Rovers did it right with Elliott. He got battered, he got kicked, he got slammed. A good friend of mine's a Bristol Rovers fan, but he got up and he kept going, and they loved him for it. Then all of a sudden, he started banging guys out of the way. He started winning headers. He started smashing balls in the back of net. And these guys were the ones who christened the Geordie Maradona, the Bristol Rovers fans, and we've kind of adopted that. But yeah, I'm with you, Mark. I think the Leeds game is not too big or ugly a game for Elliott. I think he showed in the Forest game he's up for those games. He'll play those games and he'll get stuck right in. And I think you're right. I think it could add a nice bit of balance to the midfield for the last 4 games without Sean being there. I totally agree with you on that one, Mark, to be fair. Just a comment there from Social saying, yeah, Young'uns need another ball-playing CM. Yeah, absolutely. Turned the ball over when Bruno wasn't on the ball. Yeah, absolutely. Another one about Elliott. Did you see Elliott's 6-pack in the Forest winning team photos? I didn't look that closely, Derek. I'll take your word for it, mate. But I know he's packed on the old muscle, mate. I must admit, fair play. Whitley Bay, massive. Me and Mark love a Whitley Bay, lad. Go on, son. Get yourself up there. But, so just finishing up on the game, moving on to the last category we're going to talk about tonight, mate, which is the dark arts or game management. Yeah, we were laughing about this throughout the game. Obviously, this is something that we've been massively accused of. Just a little mention to our old mate Martin Keown here. So this is the first one. So this was pulled up on Twitter. Somebody just reminded us of this. So this was Martin Keown back when we had a 0-0 draw at the Emirates, saying Newcastle are probably one of the best spoilers in the league. There was only one team trying to play football, and that was Arsenal. Joe Linton hit the deck so many times, it was ridiculous. And then he was quoted and saying this yesterday, I think it was, or even today, sorry. They played Newcastle at their own game. A lot of Newcastle players were getting angry because it takes one to know one. So yeah, he's changed his tune a bit, mate, hasn't he? In terms of so when we do it, it's dark arts. When Arsenal do it, it's good game management.
I think that's almost a reasonable comment from Keown, and I don't say that an awful lot. But actually, it's frustrating when it happens against you. But the fact that he started off by saying that they're playing their own game, I get that point. Dan Burn said something similar about we can't really complain too much when we sort of, whether it's intentional or not. These things go on during the season. You do one thing, then the other team comes back and does it to you. Fine, I can live with that. I don't mind that at all. When teams want to do it, that's fine. It's the total reluctance to acknowledge what it is as the same thing. All season, you've heard from Arteta earlier in the season. You've heard from Thomas Frank. You've heard from Sky, from BT teams, from I think it was iNews, from The Guardian, from the Daily Mail, from however many news articles that I read earlier on today about this. They all talk about Newcastle mastering the dark arts of football. And yet when you read about Manchester United, about Arsenal, about Manchester City, about Liverpool, it's game management. Now, you've got to pick one or the other. If you're going to describe exactly the same thing, you have to have it under one banner. You can't completely have a go at one team for something that they do, and every team does it. Villa do it, Everton do it, Brighton do it to an extent. Arsenal were brilliant at it at the weekend. It's game management. Yes, if you want to come all under the same banner, you can call it dark arts or game management, but you can't have a go at one team for mastering the dark arts of football and then turn around the following week for a team in the top 6 or whatever and say, oh no, it's just brilliant game management. Fuck off. It's the same thing.
Exactly. But, Eddie was quoted after the game, obviously saying that, we have no control over that. It's up to the referee to control that. It's frustrating, obviously, want the ball in play. And Laura Woods had a go at him this morning, apparently. I haven't actually seen what Laura had said, but Laura had a go and said he was being a bit hypocritical. Now, we're not going to shout at Laura. We love you, Laura. We're not going to have a go at you. But I know she's just happy that Arsenal got the win and kept the flickering hopes of a title win alive. Very, very small flame, Laura. Very, very small flame. before Erling Haaland comes over and sneezes and blows it all out in the next week or two. So I wouldn't get too excited about you win the league. But yes, you're right, Mark. You can't have your cake and eat it. You can't praise one team for doing it and slag off another team for doing it. You have to manage the games in those situations, and because added time and time. I mean, Fergie was the best at it. Fergie time was the old thing, wasn't it? Back in the day, Fergie used to do, the shit house. You go to the refs going, oh, that's time, that, and getting in their ear and everything else. Derek saying then the whole game, getting another advert for independent ball and play timekeeper. Yeah, you're probably right. These are changes that need to come into the game. But Newcastle have, I think, this whole season have managed a variety of games in very different ways. Sometimes it's required a little bit of the shithousery and a little bit of the game management. Taking a little bit of time. Even Shaw going down for, I think you called it the 1,000th time yesterday. Yeah, but even that though was just allowing the lads to have a bit of a breather and just regroup a little bit when they were getting overrun, and just go and have a chat with Tyndall on the sideline and come back on. That's game management. But then there's other games like the Spurs game where we don't pause for breath and we just fucking annihilate them. So there's been such a variety of different type of games that have required different type of performances. And as you rightly say, Mark, every team in the Premier League really has done that, except for the ones that are utterly shit that are at the bottom of the league, like Southampton and Leeds and Leicester and Everton.
Because they've done exactly the same thing. Look at them when they've come to St James's Park. They've done exactly that.
That's true. They're part of the bus. Yeah.
It's about trying to take the sting out of the game, and Arsenal did that brilliantly. Once that first sort of 5 or 6 minutes got out of the way, Arsenal, you started to see players just take their time and they go. I mean, and Ramsdale was taking 15 minutes for every goal kick.
Ages.
But it was the worst. It was nearly as bad. Was it as bad? I'd probably say it was worse than David De Gea at St James's Park, because we thought David De Gea was bad. And that was in the first 2 minutes of the game. He must have taken 60, 70 seconds over a goal kick, and you're just like, what are you doing? So do you know what I mean? That early in the game, it's absolutely ridiculous. But again, you're doing exactly what you want to do, and it's take the sting out of the crowd. You want to quiet them down. You want to get the team that little bit more cautious, not rolling with the thunder of the crowd behind it, because it's exactly what happened at the start of the game. Is Newcastle piled on because they're absolutely over it, exactly like last year. Arsenal had a little bit more nous this season and did it very, very well. But again, it comes down to this whole point of you manage the game, and you can't have a go at one team for it and then just give praise to another team for doing the same thing. It's just ridiculous.
Absolutely, mate.
The one thing I absolutely hate, and I know that the lad in the chat is an Arsenal fan, and it's this.
Yeah.
And it was this late on in the game where he went down holding his face.
It was Mickey Almiron.
Mickey.
Just kind of ran
Mickey's
into
arms,
him.
yeah. It was nowhere near his face. And I'm sorry, that should be a booking.
Yeah.
That is trying. That
it's
is
like a dive. It's like a dive, isn't it? Really,
it's absolutely trying to con the officials in the game. And I don't care who you play for. That could be Fabian Schär doing it. That could be anybody. It could be Harry Kane in the World Cup final for England that does it. I'd say exactly the same thing. I absolutely hate it. You go down holding your head, wanting the game stopped for a head injury, and Miggy was absolutely nowhere near him in that regard. I absolutely despise any player that does that. It's just so. It just really, really pisses me off.
And speaking of Fabian Schär, there was another little bit where Jesus tried to get Fabian Schär sent off or at least booked for the follow through and a tackle, and he screamed remember like Marv at the end of Home Alone when the guy puts a spider on him. He fucking screamed as loud as that, didn't he? This one here, Shaw actually, what you can't see there, Shaw's won the ball, and he's kind of he's left his arm out, and Jesus, he's caught him a little bit, but not as bad as that, mate. Fucking hell, dude. That
was as bad a scream as Grealish's during lockdown. Whenever Grealish got fouled, when there were no fans in the stadium, all you could hear was the shriek that came from him, and it was embarrassing.
Do you know Longstaff's done it? Longstaff's done it as well before. Sean
Longstaff's
guilty of it as well before. That was fucking pathetic. by Jesus.
I mean, it was a banshee wail. That was it was horrendous. It was so, again, it was one of those you're so embarrassed to go, have you really just shrieked like that in the middle of a football field? It's absolutely
Dreadful.
Yes, that's going to hurt a bit because, let's be fair, Fab left one on him. But I'm sorry, that's just awful. That's just shocking.
But to be fair, it was nearly as cringy as this tweet from Match of the Day about Granit Xhaka, comparing him to Darth Vader, which led a good friend of the channel, our mate Steve Colby, to tweet, "Yeah, they're both fucking helmets." So that's tweet of the day to you, Steve. Well done, mate. That was an absolute pearl of that one, mate. But I mean, this loving for Arsenal. I mean, listen, they're second in the league. They've had a great season. I know Social's in the comments there, and he's an Arsenal fan. I'd love Arsenal to win the league because it's been so long since they have. And I really think that it's good for the Premier League if it isn't just City all the time. But I think the fact that Arsenal have let City come in and get to where they get to, I can't see City taking the foot off the gas now. I think the best thing Arsenal could do is finish second. It's an improvement for them. If they get a couple of, decent players in the summer, maybe they can go again, maybe they can try again next season and go for the title. It's not lost yet, but I mean, what's your gut telling you, Mark? Do you think City will win this league? Because I personally do. I don't want to wind up Social in the comments there, but I think that is what I think.
Yeah, sorry, man. I'd love it. It's one of those. Like I said at the weekend, and I do feel at times Arsenal can be an unbelievably dislikable team.
Arteta, more than anything, the
way
manager's
that they've gone on,
whiny little twat.
But I really do like watching them. They've been excellent this season. I love Saka. I think Martinelli's been brilliant.
Odegaard's amazing.
Odegaard is absolutely phenomenal. Saliba's been excellent.
Yeah. Gabriel's good as well. Gabriel's good.
Yeah, the pair of them together have been great. Ramsdale's been great in goal. Ben White is played brilliantly at right back. And Zinchenko, I thought was an excellent side. I thought he had an absolute mare at the weekend. I thought he was awful, but he's been great this season as well. Look, they've got the makings of an exceptional squad. If they don't win this season, I think they'll run it again next year. But they're going to be more teams that will push. I think it's one of those ones where have they missed their opportunity by
possibly
losing
Chelsea
it out
being
this
bad,
time?
Liverpool being bad, and Spurs having a Spursy season, and
Spurs always have Spursy seasons. Let's be fair. But look, if you look at City's final games, they've got to play Everton, Chelsea, Brighton, Brentford, and
I can't see them losing the game. I can't see them losing the game.
See them losing. And I think it's City's title now. Unfortunately, just sort of a shame because you want a little bit of variety, don't you? Just do the same team. We don't want to be Scotland. We don't want to be Germany. So, or at one point Juventus winning flipping Serie A like 16 years in a row or something stupid. But that's what it starts to feel like. But that hopefully City slip up at some point because I'd love it for Arsenal to get back in there, and I think they've been that good this season. They deserve to be in that shout, and hopefully they can go to the last day of the season and really make a fight of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point by Derek there in the comments. Brighton have been brilliant this season. One of his favourite teams to watch. He thinks Dunk might have to be reprimanded for his enlightening comments, which no doubt helped Everton tonight. I do like Dunk, he's one of them players I thought could he have went to maybe a bigger team, no disrespect to Brighton. And I think he deserves a player of the month just for that ridiculous chest by Anthony. Manchester United where he just bounced off him like Thanos in the Avengers or something, which was fucking hilarious. But he ran about 20 yards to do it and he couldn't get anywhere near him, could he? But no, I think it's you're right, man. I think it is City's title. But it's like goes with the top four. I want us to finish top four this season for more reasons than one. But I think there's no better opportunity than this season probably for us to finish top four. If we don't finish top four this season, I think Chelsea get better next season. I think Liverpool come back stronger next season. Who knows what's going to happen with Spurs if Nagelsmann goes in there? Does Kane stay? Does Kane go? I think if Kane leaves Spurs, I think they slip right down. I think they're kind of maybe 10th, 10th, 11th really next season, unless they're getting a couple of really good players. Because if you think about where everyone's going to go next season, City, Arsenal, Newcastle, Man United, Chelsea back in the hunt, Liverpool back in the hunt, Spurs will go right down, and Villa are getting better as well, better and better, so this is the season you really do want to finish the Champions League and get into that picture, and then because you can get the players in that you want to get in to stay in that picture and to fight on all fronts, the league, the cups, and everything else. So, yeah, I'd be really disappointed if Newcastle slipped up, I think, Mark, in that top four race. And I'd like to think with the games we've got left, we should be all right, but I don't want to tempt fate.
No, don't get too cocky. But look, it was a big gap for Liverpool to overhaul, realistically speaking, and for Brighton for that matter. I think with the fact that you did, what is it, the remaining three, it's Leeds, Leicester and Brighton. I think those first two, especially Leicester. I mean, Leicester was so poor. Tonight it's just I think there's too many points left on the board for Newcastle to take on for them to be in any worry. That's my belief. I'm not going to get overconfident in that prediction, but I just think given where everybody has to play, I do think Newcastle have got. There are at least 6 points there for them to walk away with.
Absolutely. Nice comment there from Social John saying he won't be happy if we don't finish in the top four. It's great to see from an Arsenal fan. Really appreciate that, mate. I think we'll all collectively laugh our balls off if Man United slip out of the top four. I must admit that would be absolutely spectacular.
This is what I said the other day. It's one of those where it's which is the lesser of two evils, because you either got Man U that fall out of it or Liverpool miss out on it, and I don't know which in that case which one's worse. I'm tempted to suggest that Liverpool overhauling Man U and getting in there is just I think that's the one that I think I prefer to happen, just for see the look on Ten Hag's face, especially if that happens in the final game of the season. That would make my day.
It would be so sweet, so sweet. Great shout from Maggot. I was going to bring this up actually. So the Mackhams and the Smuggies have both got into the playoffs by the looks of it in the championship. That is Sunderland and Middlesbrough, if you didn't know. Maybe for social there, who maybe didn't know what I'm talking about. So I mean, that's massive, Mark, isn't it? So one of those two is going to come up, hopefully, into the Premier League. I mean, who's your money on out of those two? Who's your money on?
After the way Sunderland played in the second half today, my money would be on Sunderland. But to be fair, the front sort of two of Borough, Cameron Archer and the name escapes me. The lad that scored all the goals this season, his name's gone. Anyway, those two, they've been phenomenal. Those two have been phenomenal as well.
Carrick's done a great job there. There were 21st when he first went in there or something. He's done a great job there, man.
He's been brilliant. Isn't the final as well? Is that not the same day as the last game of the season? So potentially you could have all three teams playing the same afternoon.
Yeah, all three sets of Northeast fans will be in the capital at the same time. So we're playing Chelsea, and you have the Mackhams, and you have the Smuggies as well. That Trafalgar Square will get busy.
It may not exist, to be fair, after all three are there.
Yeah, listen. As long as everybody plays nice, we're going to get into this on Wednesday because we are going to be talking. We've got PK coming on.
Thanks, Maggot.
Yeah, thanks, Maggot. Yeah, we're going to have PK coming on. Obviously, talk a little bit about just general Newcastle stuff, but he is going to put his NUFC trust hat on. We are going to talk about this. Everyone saw these images of this guy getting tossed out of the crowd. Arsenal fans sneaking in. So we don't want to see that in football. We don't want to see people getting into fights and causing shit. Go and watch the team and support your team and all that stuff, and just do it in a calm, in kind of fun manner. That's what football's all about. Don't start kicking off and fighting. So if all three Northeast supporters are in the capital at the same time, look, me and Mark know Sunderland fans, and they're good guys. We'll have a pint with them, have a crack with them, and all that stuff. You don't need to get any shit with each other. You don't need to start fights with each other. Just fucking have a bit crack and walk off and leave it be. Do you know what I mean? That's all I would say.
Look, the other side of that, the Arsenal, just have some sense. If you're sitting in the home end, just keep your mouth shut.
What a prick! You
sit. As somebody put in our chat earlier, you sit on your hands. You keep your mouth shut. You enjoy the fact that you're winning the game, but you don't say anything because that happens. And can we just shout out to the lad that curled up in the flag and was going to sleep in the stand, rolled
Have
up
you
in
got
one
him?
of the.
Have you got him on the Have you got him?
I don't think I haven't
Yeah,
got it on loaded
okay,
up, but it was
I'll
just.
see if I can get him. I'll see if I can get him while you're
If you
talking. You
if you
filter
haven't
them.
seen it, it is absolutely hilarious.
It can't have been true. It can't have been true. Surely not. Was
I
it
don't know
true?
whether it was just somebody taking the mickey, but it was definitely somebody who'd wrapped themselves up in a flag. I can't find it now. I know you sent it to us, didn't you?
I've got him. Hang on. I'll send it now. Hang on. I'll send it now. Fill for a minute while I send.
So that's the kind of thing you want. You don't want to see fans kicking off in the stands, and it's rare. I can't remember the last time I saw anything like that. But I think there were a few, and I think that's something that sort of needs addressing. That there are plenty of those. There were a few Arsenal fans that were reported to have been sat in the Newcastle end. Obviously, one of them ended up getting into an altercation, but that's just not what it's not what you want, and that has to be policed better as well, because there was the lack of stewards that were immediately on the scene, and that fight was going on for an awful long time with no no intervention.
Yeah, but it's not the kind of thing we want to be seeing. I mean, we'll talk to PK on Wednesday about kind of how the groups can engage with the club about that. But here is the main man here, as you were talking about, mate. So this was the lad who was wrapped up in the flag in the ground. He must have drank some amount of ale if he was curling up to go to sleep in that flag at the bottom of the stairs. But again, we're the stewards to wake the kid up or check he's all right. He could be spewing his guts up inside that flag there. I wouldn't fancy being more flags taken that away when he was done. But big shout out to Chris Mack there who tweeted that. So heavy Saturday for this charger, as he tweeted.
I was going to say, if he is holding up in there, some dry cleaning bill to get that flag cleaned.
Oh, mate, absolutely not. Yeah, you wouldn't want that rolling over your head, would you? In the old Lee's end, if he's just blue chunks of it, mate. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And we must say as well, a big shout out to the lasses. BT's banged it in there just to remind us. Massive shout out to the lasses who obviously won the FA Women's National League Division 1 trophy, and they got promoted as well. So massive shout out. Where the lasses, they're absolutely brilliant. It's great to see the women's team and the men's team doing so well. The women's team have picked up silverware, something the lads team haven't done this season. So they're one up on the lads there, but it's absolutely brilliant to see. There's other channels that do a lot of stuff with the lasses. I know that I always shout them out. The boys in Newcastle Fans TV do a great job covering the lasses game. So go check them guys out if you want to see a bit more about what the lasses are doing as well. But yeah, it's brilliant to see, Mark, isn't it? You know, we've often said how inspiring it is having daughters ourselves, and I know your girls into football, and it's a real inspiration to see a local Newcastle women's team being successful and doing well.
Yeah, I guess you've got Durham have done pretty well over recent years, but to have it as part of the fabric of the club, and I think that's key. I think it's one of those where there are several big clubs that didn't really put any money into it. I mean, Mike Ashley was never going to put any money into it, was he? Let's be fair. And I like the fact that the owners have come in particular, Amanda have come in, and they want the progress to be made right across the board, men's, women's teams, whoever's. Do you know what I mean? That's huge in driving forward the fan base. And you're right. I mean, my youngest loves. She liked watching the Lionesses. We've been to one of those games. Sort of tailed off a little bit, but she'd still like to go to the games and stuff. So that the more that happens, the more that they inspire the local girls to get involved and give them a pathway to go and play for the club they support. You know what I mean? That's what it's all about. It gives them something to aspire to.
Absolutely, no, it is. It's brilliant to see. Long may it continue. We want successful teams right across the whole club. The women's team, the men's team, the youth academies. We want to all be successful and flying, because that just reverberates around the city and around the club as well. But that's us all wrapped up for this week's What's Going On, everybody. Thank you so much, everybody who jumped in the comments. It always helps the episode flow. As I mentioned at the start, if you just checked us out for the first time tonight, please consider subscribing. I'd love you to come on board. Smash that button. We're over 3,275 subs now. So we're getting as close as we can to that 3,500, then on to 4,000 again, and then hopefully on to 5,000. And we have a great prize for 5,000. We're going to release that once we get past the 4,000 mark. So keep clicking that button, everybody. You could be in for a chance to win a belter of a prize for not just a Newcastle fan, but a football fan as well. But me and Mark are going to be back on Wednesday with PK in tow to talk a bit about the club and also a lot about the trust as well, about the elections, a little bit about what the trust are looking to do and what they can do for the members and everything else. But until then, let's keep supporting that team, McCoy United. This is Chris and Mark signing off. We'll catch everybody later.
Take care, guys.
Cheers, everyone.